Welcome to the Kickstart podcast. My name is Preston. On this episode, we have the pleasure of meeting someone who actually started at the same recruiting agency that I did, who quickly evolved into becoming an awesome founder of a fast-growing recruiting agency. Joe, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So for those that don't know who you are and your background, would you mind just sharing a little bit of high level of who you are and what you've done over the past couple of years?
I'm a co-founder of Grow Recruiting, which is a technology recruiting agency. So we fill everything from software to infrastructure, DevOps, QA, basically anything tech focused for companies all over the US. We were focused mainly in New York, but we've since expanded since the pandemic. So small firm, but we have a lot of pretty well-known clients, some great startups, and yeah, that's what we do. So
super cool. A lot to talk about in terms of you running your own business, starting that. But I want to take a step back and just learn a little bit about how you got to where you are now. So like me, if I remember correctly, you started at really the same nationwide agency. And I believe it was fresh out of college, right? So would you be able to maybe share like how you actually got that job? Was it fresh out of college? Were you interviewing other jobs?
Yes. So it was the first job I got out of college, my first official job. I had some odd jobs in college, but first desk job, and it was promoted as a sales job on LinkedIn. I was living in Boston at the time, and my girlfriend now my wife, was from New York and was living in New York. So I was just looking for any job really to get to New York. And my father owns a sales company, a small sales company. So, I didn't have any connections into like the corporate finance or retail or real estate, space. So I thought sales would be a good place to start. And then I would, quickly move on to something else outside of recruiting. But here I am, over 10 years later, still doing it. So
initially you thought this was a sales job before the interview started.
So it was posted as a sales or business development, maybe. It wasn't posted as a recruiting job. Even I think even when I showed up to the office at the time, I didn't even know what a recruiting firm was. But they had some pretty impressive people working there and talked about, how recruiting is sales, how you have to find clients and candidates, since it was a 360. For people that don't know what that is, 360, you're doing both the client and the candidate side. Talked about how basically if depending on how well you did, how quickly you can move up into a lead and then a management, and how the commission structure worked. And seemed like these people were making a lot of money. So yeah, that interested me. I honestly, when I took the job, thought I was going to quickly move into something else. I think I was still taking real estate classes at the time.
Interesting. I actually thought about being a real estate agent too before becoming a recruiter.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover in that.
Yeah.
in those industries. So you don't have to. It's there's not really too much of a barrier to entry, and if you do well, you can make a lot of money. So that's what interested me. So
that's so funny. Well, my experience was the exact same as you. I was also on the market for a sales role, and I think they called it a sales associate or sales analyst, something like that. I applied and I had no idea it was actually a full desk recruiting position at a recruiting agency. And like you, I had no idea that the recruiting industry even existed, let alone what recruiters actually did. So that's how I entered, funny enough. And then
a little bit of a bait and switch, but it worked, I guess.
A little bit of a bait and switch. But look at us now.
Exactly.
After all these years. So you went through the interview process. How was the interview process at an agency like that for you?
I think they're just looking for personality mostly for that interview. I didn't really have any interview experience. So I remember I was pretty nervous, honestly. I wanted the job because I wanted to move. And I had some other stuff lined up, but I sent them an email after. My manager, she was from the same area that I went to college, so we had some connections that way. But yeah, they hired a lot of people and they fired a lot of people very quickly. So I think they were looking for personality, and they kind of the cream rises to the top in that type of space. So if you can do well there, you can really do well anywhere, I felt. But the interview process, I think, was pretty straightforward. They just wanted to get to know you. It wasn't that hard hitting. I don't know if it's just a little different. But.
No, I felt like if you had 2 lungs, 2 arms, 2 legs, you're able to speak English.
Yeah.
You're hired.
Exactly.
No, mine was pretty straightforward. I mean, I think it was like a 30-minute, just super easy, first round cultural call. Then they invite you to the office. You sit and meet different members. I think it was 3 or 4 different members, 5-10 minutes per person. And then they have you do like a little mock exercise as well, kind of like, throwing into the deep water, seeing how you.
Yeah, I don't think I had I think the exercise before my time, but I sat in on a couple of interviews for the exercise. So.
Oh, interesting. So you never did it yourself?
No, I didn't have to do that.
I was
fortunately, I guess it seemed a little bit more intimidating, to be honest, in my interview process. But
I was super nervous. I was nervous. Yeah. I was scared. I think the whole purpose of it was a role play exercise where I had to come in acting like I was a recruiter, and then the people who were interviewing me pretended they were like the founders or hiring managers, and I essentially had to pitch like why they had to work with me as a recruiter. And it's, again, the whole purpose of that is to really mimic what we go through when it comes to lead gen and business development. So I think if you can operate and you can survive that, they'll probably have a good chance of them hiring you. And so that's what happened. Funny enough, though, do you remember how you dressed? And the reason why I ask is I didn't really do too many interviews before this. So I was extremely inexperienced. I was nervous and stressed out like you, but I remember I did over the top when it comes to like how I dressed for the interview. I walked in with like a full suit. I did the whole tie get up. I don't know if you did the same or like you walked in a little bit more business casual, kind of just a little bit toned down. But I think
I did the same.
You did the same.
I think it was a pretty bit. Yeah, the suit didn't fit me great. That was like my first. So it was pretty baggy suit. Looking back on some pictures of it, but I actually lived in Boston and they didn't know for some reason. I think maybe I put New York on my resume. So I took the train down and then they took the train home and then they called me back in to come in back in the next day, took the train down again. So I took the train down 3 times. And meanwhile, they thought I was living in New York. I was actually taking a 4-hour train ride to and from Boston to New York. I might have spent the night, but it was it probably cost me like $500 to interview there. So train rides back and forth.
I didn't know that. You didn't interview at the Boston office, or they didn't like forward you or introduce you to someone at the Boston office?
No, I think they must have thought that I was in New York for some reason.
That is so funny.
And I never mentioned it just because I was, didn't want to ruffle any feathers. So
wow. So Joe, now you can tell people that you actually paid money to interview at a company. I think there's not too many other people in that crowd with you, but that's a funny story. Yeah. So you get in, you got the job, and then how was like your first 6 to 12 months there? You mentioned that you did odd jobs throughout college. Your dad was an entrepreneur as well, working a sales job. So how much of learning and absorbing the entrepreneurial like work-life balance or work ethic from your dad, or maybe even the odd jobs that you did throughout college, how much of that played a huge factor in finding success at an agency and recruiting for you?
Well, initially, since I was not planning to stay, I really didn't like the job initially. It was hard because you just were cold calling, you were getting hung up on a lot. They had that dial, kind of that phone with like 12 different lines, and you would just pick a line and start calling phone numbers. So it was tough. I mean, you go in Monday morning at 8 a.m. and you just start making calls, and really it's in the beginning, it's a ton of rejection. Not that it's not, the job itself is a lot of rejection. So it was hard to get into the mindset that like I was going to see any success from this, but they trained really well. And as I got better at it, and as I started seeing success and saw there were some pretty impressive people at the companies, some salespeople. And as I saw them being successful, I did, start to see a future in the business, but it did take some time. I think a lot of people give up before they kind of see success. That's why there's so much turnover, especially for junior people. But I was pretty determined to, find some success and do well, because I just felt like, if you worked hard enough, if you put in the time, if you've got, we're able to get good at your craft, which is like talking to people and, making connections and following up, and if you had determination, I saw that those people did well. So I felt like eventually I was going to break through, and that did happen. So
you never thought you wanted to quit?
No, I did think I wanted to quit. Definitely in the beginning. I think a lot of people do, but I also saw, I looked longer term, and I think a lot of people that quit probably look shorter term. They weren't enjoying it. It's not, initially it's not a job unless you see immediate success which a lot of people don't. But no, I saw the longer term, the opportunity to, move into a lead position and make a lot more commission and develop clients and develop the business. And that all interested me, but the rejection and, just the nature of the office that we were in initially. Yeah, I definitely wanted to quit. I think probably in the first 6 months. Like I think probably most people do, honestly, unless you're just a really gritty salesperson.
I think if you don't see any sign of like positive result, it's very difficult. So like do you remember how fast it took you to get your first client?
It was within the first 3 months. I remember, so the client, I called it, the first client I had that I developed on my own, they passed a couple over to us, to kind of give us some wins. But
wow, wait, hold on a second. You got clients handed to you as a noob? I've never had that happen.
I actually don't know if it was
like 10, 11 months.
Yeah, didn't happen often. But I know. The first client I picked up, I called in. It was a company called Intellepayment. I don't even know if they're still around. It was a Harvard group of people from Harvard that started like a car insurance sort of company. Called up, pitched .NET developers to the business manager, and he hung up and basically didn't think anything of it. And then like a week later got a call from the CTO, and then they ended up coming in and doing interviews, and I think I placed 8 people there in the first year. So that was a really good client, and that was a good win because it was, one of those calls that you really don't expect anything to come out of. And I feel like that's how a lot of the times how it happens in recruiting. It's not always how you plan it out, but if you put the time in and you talk to enough good people, then good things will happen.
So do you think that if you have a reasonable work ethic, Joe, and then you just end up not quitting, do you think it's inevitable that you're going to start seeing really good results in recruiting? So the people that quit prematurely, you think it was basically too early and premature for them? If they just stuck in, kept their head down and kept at it, eventually they would have found success. Like, do you believe that?
Yes, I do. Because I don't think that it's not rocket science, but it does take determination. You have to be consistent every day. You have to put the time in, and you will eventually see results. I mean, there's just so much potential business out there, and if you learn the craft, or just there's a lot of different things that go into it. But I do think it takes. I also think it takes a certain type of person. There was people that I saw in the business that just weren't able to talk to clients, whether it be they just put them on a pedestal, or for another reason they just couldn't kind of gather their thoughts in the moment, which I think is a lot of, sales is a mix of just being able to communicate with people, but it also takes, critical thinking too. So, but I do think if you work hard enough, you'll see success.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Would you say that recruiting is a sales job?
Definitely. Yeah.
100%. There's actually a lot of people, many of them who could be listening right now, that actually don't agree. But I think if you've never gone through a proper sales role, you wouldn't know that what you actually do day to day is actually sales related, which is funny enough, right? If you've worked in sales, you worked in the agency world, simple things like outreach, customization, feedback, understanding obstacles, that's all sales at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, so, especially if you're doing 360 sales. I mean, I don't know. It'd be hard to say how it is in a sales job. You have to pitch, there's a lot of recruiting firms out there. You have to pitch yourself to the client, then you have to pitch your company, and then you have to pitch a candidate. So, you're selling. You're not just selling a product, you're selling someone to hire that can ultimately make their own decision. So you have to do the selling on the candidate side too. So
exactly. So to give the viewers a little context, the agency that Joe and I worked at was full desk, meaning that we were responsible of doing everything from finding our own clients to like finding our candidates. A lot of agencies out there actually split the two functions on 2 different teams. So sometimes sometimes you only focus on the biz dev side, and others you only focus on the candidate side. But for us, we essentially did everything. It's as close as you can be to like running your own business as an entrepreneur. But in the beginning, it's a little bit different now, but in the beginning, it was very, very difficult. I do not want to understress that. I think a lot of people come into recruiting, think it's an easy job. Especially on the agency world, it is not. I know when you and I first started, cold calling is huge. I know cold calling is still effective, but I'm sure with in-mails and emails and other methods now, there's a lot of different tools that you can use. But for our agency, that was very much like the primary tool to get into companies. And just a quick experience, Joe, I actually remember almost every single day. I remember I have to I got a cup of coffee, and if I had to go to the bathroom, I would just go to the bathroom, but I would go and just stand for like 5-10 seconds in front of the mirror, take deep breaths, like, Preston, you got this. I got like 70 to 90 calls that I had to ring this day and I got to just survive. And I just told myself, just keep at it, don't give up. And if you can just, learn as much as you can, stay consistent, you'll see results eventually. But it was tough. Some days my ears were ringing, and just even talking about that now just gives me a little PTSD.
Yeah. No, it's a grind. It was a grind.
It's a grind.
And it still is now. I think now a lot of people say, okay, it's, it's not as much cold calling or, but you're still, when you message someone over email, you still eventually need to talk to them on the phone, even though it's, a setup call, it's technically a warm lead or whatever it may be. They may be talking to 5-6 other recruiters, and, you still need to sell yourself. I think that people sometimes will go into a warm call with a little bit more, lackadaisical, feeling like they don't need to close the business, but you're selling yourself. I feel like, especially in recruiting, in every interaction. So I still take time, in feedbacks and follow-ups to, craft my emails to my clients and candidates, because there's a lot of competition out there for us recruiters. So
absolutely. You can't be a successful recruiter and just hide behind emails all day. You just have to man up and talk to someone. Okay. So you joined, what team were you on specifically? What was your focus?
.NET and QA.
Ooh.
Which those two aren't really related. So I don't know why that was a team. But
I guess it made sense at the time.
Yeah.
So you joined that, and then how quickly did you, so we joined as a kind of a recruiting coordinator or an associate recruiter, and how quickly did it take for you to kind of get promoted to kind of a senior lead recruiter? And then at that point, how fast did it take you to get promoted to a manager? I think you mentioned you ended up, before you left, managing a small team.
Yeah. So I was lead about a year and a couple months.
Nice.
But made it to a lead, which at the time I think was like a little over 20 placements. Once you did like 20 plus placements, it varied a little bit, but and then it became a team manager another year and a couple months after that.
Becoming lead after 20 placements, a little over a year, that's actually really fast. From my experience, I mean, it took some people, especially at my office, like on average, probably roughly around 2 years. So it took me a little over a year as well, similar to you, to kind of hit that lead. And I honestly just backed it up with hard work. But like, it was surprising to me that it just took some people much, much longer. So kudos to that. How did your responsibilities and scope change being a lead recruiter and then becoming a manager at an agency?
Yeah, when you were an individual contributor, you basically just had to focus on your own accounts. Everyone shared candidates on the team, but you had your own accounts. And then when you moved up to a lead and a manager, you got commission off of everyone's placement. So you basically just focused on, it was just more of a focus on everyone, like the team's accounts, bringing in candidates for all different accounts, and then training people at the same time. The company did a really good job of kind of training you how to train, because everyone started at the same level. So you were trained, and then you were basically expected to train people the same way. Everyone kind of has their own style, but it was pretty much learn by doing. So, but you throw people into the fire on day one. I think assuming that you did the same. I think we were calling candidates on like third or fourth day we started, and then clients like 2 weeks in. So you learn pretty quickly if you're going to make it or not, and then how to train people. So the responsibilities definitely change, and then you're expected to have your team do well, not just yourself. So you put a little bit more pressure on some other people too outside of yourself.
That's cool. It sounds like the transition to management didn't come too difficult for you. I know for some, it can be very overwhelming. They barely have a good hold of themselves being an IC recruiter, let alone now they have to manage and train people. So that's great that it kind of seemed like it was a little bit more natural path for yourself than others. When you get promoted in an agency, I know everyone has different tracks, but at a certain point, you'll either get a flat fee or a percentage. And that's where financially it can start becoming really great and really, really lucrative. So do you remember maybe like how much maybe you guys made at your biggest month at your job? Like what was the record before you left?
I don't know what the record was for our team, to be honest, but I had I had my first 100K month as a manager. I think a few months after I took over the team, like within 4 months, which was a big milestone. I remember the 100K month was celebrated. So I had one, and then I had another one a couple months after that. So I had a couple really good kind of months as I was managing. The team was doing well. To be fair, I did come into a team that two of the recruiters were a bit more senior. So they didn't need as much training. So we were kind of rocking on all cylinders kind of right when I started, and then we hired somebody else, and my partner at the time, or the lead on my team, he helped train.
Man, Joe, I'm kind of I wish I can go back in time, a little bit jealous of your experience, a little bit different than mine, but getting accounts when you start, not having to do the mock at the interview, already having experienced recruiters on the team, rocking and rolling. I mean, geez, yeah,
wasn't as smooth as it sounds.
Yeah, so my team was actually a startup team. It was the product UX. I think when I joined, they only had 2 people and just started, I think, a month ago or something. So it was all about like building from the ground up, no accounts, nothing. But it was a good experience. So you were there for a little over 6 years, I remember. What was it always your plan to leave and work for yourself? Did you want to work at another agency? Did you want to go and work in-house? I know a lot of people who determine through their experience that agency life is not for them. A lot of them move in-house, meaning that, they join the internal team at a startup or a company and they focus only on scaling that company. Did that ever appeal to you at all?
No, in-house didn't appeal to me. I think I did want to, I don't know when I made the decision to start my own agency. I guess it was probably pretty close to when I did it, honestly, because I felt like I was developing a lot of business and there wasn't, I just felt like there was an opportunity for me to, take more of the commission and also build up my own team and, kind of do things a little bit my own way. And I was still young. I wasn't married, didn't have any kids, and didn't see really too much downside to doing that. So I think if I didn't do that, maybe I would have gone into another type of sales job or just tried to become, division manager at the company that we were at. But it never interested me to go internal because I like the aspect of being successful and getting compensated for it directly, not having someone else determine how much you're going to be paid based off of the tenure, how long you've been somewhere, something like that. So sales jobs always interested me because you really kind of pave your own future, so to speak. So you could, you determining how hard you do and how hard you work and how well you do determines how much money you make. It's a direct correlation. Whereas with, maybe an internal job, it's not as direct. Not to say that it's not, there's obviously benefits to that as well.
Yeah, it's actually really cool that you bring that up because one of the reasons why I ended up choosing after I realized it was a sales role is because you get paid, you get moved up based on performance, right? It doesn't matter what school you went to. It doesn't matter like when you joined. If you can work your butt off and you perform, you can move up and then you can catch up to your peers or even surpass them very, very quickly in other jobs. So I think if you are financially motivated, you love sales, I think you love biz dev, like definitely look into recruiting in the agency world. But I definitely appreciate you sharing your experience. So when you decided to leave, did you just quit? Did you give a 2-week notice? Did you have, it sounded like this is something that you want to do for a long time. So did you have like a big savings account to kind of hedge, just to kind of help you get off the ground? It sounded like, you did a lot of calculations, which you should, if you're going to end up working for yourself. Like, do you have savings? How much responsibilities? How many obligations do you have in your life? Walk me through, like, how did you leave? And then how did you start your business? Like, did you have clients from the get-go or you built everything, all your book of business from the ground up?
Well, my expenses were extremely low at the time, so I didn't really need to have that much saved. There wasn't that much overhead that went into it. There was a little bit more than maybe I expected, but it wasn't much. And then, no, I had a non-compete when I left, so I couldn't take any of my clients with me. So I was living in New York and I was recruiting for companies in Boston remotely at the time, and basically just printed out a sheet of companies that were hiring for, I think the market I started with was DevOps and infrastructure roles, which if outside of technology it's a pretty niche market, and just basically started sending emails and calling companies on day one. And then I got my first client or potential client to respond. And she said she went on my website, and I didn't have a website at the time. So then she asked me about how long I'd been in business, and basically then I figured out, okay, I need to get a website together. This company, if I start having some success, I need to have some sort of online presence. So then I built the website, and then picked up first client, did my first placement off of, I think it was a Monster resume. It was pretty easy. It wasn't necessarily easy to find, but it was, not like it is now. I don't use Monster anymore. And then I was off to the races. I think I took a small loan from my dad that I then paid back within like the first with my first placement. Basically, it was
Amazing.
just to keep me going to start.
So you thought, hold on one second. So you thought it made sense for you to start a business without having a website. Is that just an afterthought? You didn't think it was like a priority?
I had maybe just like a landing page, but I didn't think that the clients, I felt like rarely checked the website. It's more LinkedIn. I had updated my LinkedIn, but this person did end up checking the website. So
that's so funny. And then, but it worked out. Do you remember what kind of, how big the commission was for this placement? Your first one?
24,000.
Oof. And how did it feel for you? Not having to share that or split that with anyone.
That's why I did it. That's why I said started. It felt great. I mean, but then it was really pretty quickly on to the next one. I mean, it kind of, because the goal was always to build the business and make it sustainable and not just be kind of one-off placement here, one-off placement there. I really wanted to build a good client base, and so it felt nice, but it was kind of on to the next pretty quickly.
Sounds like you have a very consistent, almost like a hunter mentality, right? You enjoy it for 5 seconds and move on to the next. And I can totally relate, but I'm like that too. And no matter how well or how big the placement is, how well I do that week or that month, it's always like, okay, now next one, next client. And I think that's key to working for yourself. I think in any business, because you don't want to just be a flash in the pan, have success, and then just fizzle out and then struggle, right? To me, it's like you want a sustainable, consistent business. And I think having that attitude or feeling like your back's always against the wall, you always have to keep reaching out to new relationships or partnerships. I think that's something that I can totally relate to, that helped me a lot. And I think it seems like you do the same thing. It kind of resonates. And so I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. I mean, it starts at zero every month. That's how we did it at the agency. They did a really good job of kind of setting up certain metrics that you needed to hit. And I kind of, took that and added my own thoughts to it of what I should do, how many emails. I had a daily, I had a daily checklist that I still use of basically things I should be doing every day. And now, we're a small company. It's just myself, partner, and one employee, and then we have an advisor. So it's important to, I think, make sure you spend time and focus on the right things when you're this small. So
for sure. Did you start your company alone? You said that you have a partner. So when did the partner join? Did he join from the beginning? Has this always been something that you want to do?
Having a partner was not something I initially maybe thought of, but after having done it for a few months solo was something I definitely felt like would be an asset, and has been. We're great. My partner is we get along great. We're great friends, and we also work together very well. He's good at certain things that I'm not as good at, and I'm good at certain things that he's not as good at. So it's it's a good to have two people that, can kind of benefit each other the way that we do. So
nice. And so after all these years, you were focused on the Boston market. I'm curious, how's the bar?
We've transitioned back to New York. Once the non-compete was up, we went back to New York. There was more, and now we do all remote. So it's anywhere in the United States, basically, since the pandemic.
So I guess in the beginning, I want to ask you, how was the Boston market different from New York, or was it did it feel the same?
Yeah, it was the same. It was small. It's a little smaller. And New York's different because you just have to get people, you can really search anywhere for people that aren't familiar, anywhere in the metro area, anywhere within an hour of New York City. Boston's a little bit different. Not every office is in the city, so you have to find people that can drive in certain places. So kind of figuring out, I guess, the logistics of where people had to live for certain jobs at the time, that was the only difference. And it was just smaller. The salaries were slightly lower, I think, too. But
okay, cool.
Still a good market, though.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of good companies out there. So eventually it was you and your partner, you guys grew. And then when did you bring on, I guess, your first hire? And then what is she focusing on? Is it full desk? Is it client, biz dev? Is it just the candidate sourcing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we brought her on a few months ago, and she's just focused on recruiting for now. And she's doing a great job. She picked up the technology piece very quickly. So basically, we have at this point established clients that are recurring clients, which is awesome. We're always looking for new clients, but we have recurring clients that will come to us for all things technology. And basically, my partner and I didn't have the bandwidth to fill all these roles on our own, and thought it would be a good time to, bring someone in that could supplement that. And then eventually as we bring on more, can move into, more of a training position and kind of take some of the daily, recruiting tasks off of us so we can focus more on building the business, the long-term goal.
But you're still very much hands-on yourself, even with having a first hire.
Yep. Still do business development, still do the recruiting, still do a lot of the smaller aspects of the business. It seems like it from the outside looking in, I think a lot of people think, okay, because I do see a lot of people that start recruiting agencies, and there is definitely parts to it that people you can pick up, and depending on the type of personality, you can learn it pretty quick. But there is a lot of little nuances that go into it that maybe people don't see from the outside.
Kind of like learning how to run a business and anything else that kind of falls along with that, right? And so I think in recruiting, you learn how to recruit really well. And then if you start your own business, then you have to learn how to do that and be a business operator at the same time. So was learning the whole business side, was that difficult for you? Was it natural for you? Like admin stuff, legal, taxes stuff, anything that is outside of like the day-to-day full desk recruiting? Or is that something that, is still a challenge to you and you're just kind of doing your best?
Well, you have to find the right people to do that stuff. I think if you have to talk to enough people, and I was always open to having conversations with other business owners, even if they weren't in the recruiting space, but a lot of people in the recruiting space that I had known that started businesses, and just kind of getting the, little details of things that you need to make sure you cover with them. And it takes time, like anything, to learn it. But once you do, there's little mistakes you're going to make along the way, but you won't make those mistakes twice, I don't think, for the most part. And I also worked, first office I rented was with a small business, was in the office space, and they actually helped me quite a bit. So if you can get into, if people are listening to this thinking about starting a recruiting business, having other companies that have started businesses is definitely a big plus. People you can talk to and ask questions.
That camaraderie is helpful. So you started in a physical office, but now you're fully remote. What are your thoughts in the future? Are you going to stay fully remote, return to some sort of hybrid? Do you think it's actually possible to hire and train perhaps even a little bit of a bigger team fully remote? It seems like, you've found a great person. Perhaps maybe you lucked out finding her. But if you want to think about maybe the idea of hiring other people after her, do you think maybe your same training systems and routines can still apply to them, or maybe you have to change things a little bit?
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of business. I think if you are, I listened to a podcast this morning on another founder who's started and sold, I think, 3 larger companies. He's been doing it for much longer than I have. And he said he didn't believe that you could do it remotely. I think but he hired entry-level people. I think if you hire people that are a little bit more experienced and you just trust your employees, then you can do it remotely. It's been working great for us so far. All 3 of us are remote. I live in Boston, and then my partner lives in New York, and then our employee lives in upstate New York. So I think it's possible if you can trust your people, but it just depends on the type of business that you're running. If you're hiring entry-level people, I think it'd be a lot more difficult to train and build people up from entry level. So
how do you know you can trust somebody really well? Is it just giving them clear expectations and goals and just seeing how well that they can meet that within a certain time period? Like, do you have a metric or just kind of a rule of thumb from your experience?
Yeah, I think it's probably hard to tell. I think we've gotten really lucky. We have a great team right now. I put a lot of faith in my team, but I think, if you give people work to do and if they get it done, then, you're happy. But if you're not seeing the results that you're looking for, then not being in a physical office could definitely be, I would say partially to blame for that, but I haven't experienced it yet, so I can't really say it for sure.
Yeah, I personally love remote, but like you, I learned recruiting 9 to 5, 5 days a week in the office, right? And I would love to find a way to continue doing it full remote, as I just love the flexibility. So I think like you, I'm small enough where I think about it, but I don't have to seriously think about it unless we decide tomorrow, oh my God, we need to scale. But I think it's a very interesting conversation, and it just goes hand in hand with the greater economy and the greater chatter of remote first in office and what we're seeing, especially in the technology industry. So you've seen a lot of success at your first recruiting job, which is awesome. And now you're seeing seemingly another layer of success working for yourself. And I think that's really impressive. It's very, very difficult to find success after you make that jump for yourself. So running a full desk, you made the first hire, but you're still hands-on. Do you have any advice from your experience to those that are listening? Like any advice or tips that you want to share on what do you think works really, really well when it comes to business development on the client side? And equally, on the other hand, like what do you think works really, really well when it comes to just sourcing and finding good candidates?
Yeah, on the business development side, I think trying to really be yourself and put the potential client on the same level as you is important. People want to work with people that they like, is what I've learned from doing this for a long time. So if they can't get along with you, or they sense that, you're not, I guess, being who you are, if you got some, if you're a little bit fake, sometimes salespeople can be a little bit over salesy. Yeah, I think that, just it doesn't create basically the relationship that you need, where there's a lot of different back and forth, and you have to be able to, and also goes with kind of putting them on the same level. So you have to be able to give your clients feedback on what's working and what's not working. And if if they treat you as a vendor as opposed to a partner, then it's really hard to, hard to get through to them. So, work with people that put you on the same level, work with people that listen to you, work with people that you can get along with. That would be on the client side. And then same thing actually goes for the candidate side too. If you're honest with people and straightforward and don't, tell them things they want to hear. If you actually give them the real feedback and the real advice for interviews and things like that, I feel like that gets a lot better response than, trying to please everyone. If you try to please everyone in this business, you're never going to succeed. So you have to, I think, being real would be the most important thing.
Being real, being honest, being transparent helps you, in your words, on both the candidates and client side.
Yeah, for sure. I think I do a good job of connecting with people. I think that's it. I mean, that obviously an important part of this business. People can sense when you're being fake or when you're being real. So if you're being real, if you're giving real advice, if you're, having an honest conversation with someone, I think that they appreciate that a lot more and they remember it too, rather than, just telling them again what they want to hear. So
when reaching out to clients, Joe, how important do you think it is to be specialized in your market versus generalized or doing every position out there in the world when it comes to just establishing just a good first impression or credibility with new business?
Yeah, I think it makes all the difference. I mean, having a niche or specialization is what separates you from the rest of all the other recruiters that are reaching out to companies and just spamming them, or even if they're, sending them somewhat relevant. As long as if you have a difficult position, they have a difficult position to fill, and that's your specialty, that's going to get you in the door a lot of the times. And that's why we try to be as specialized as we can, because we are a small company. We haven't, built up a huge brand like some of these other recruiting firms. But if we can show them that we specialize in whatever they're hiring for and really kind of drive that home, then that's usually a good way to get into some of the larger companies that maybe we wouldn't have as much access to, because we are a newer company.
For sure. What sort of companies do you work with? Is it all just early stage, 10, 20 persons team to large post IPO, all of the above? Do you have any preference as well? Do you prefer working with the companies that are like on the up and up, going through fast growth, a little bit smaller, or the ones that are more established?
Maybe a couple of years ago, I would have said I liked working with startups more than the larger companies, but I think I like a good mix, because I like the fast growing companies. They have a ton of roles they need to fill, and they really look at you as a partner. But with that, a lot of things can change in the startup world. So I like them because of the opportunity to work on a lot of positions, fill them quickly, work with an exciting company. But I also do like the larger, more established companies, because there's more stability there, right? So having a good mix, I think, in your portfolio is important, because if you just work with startups or you just work with large companies, you're going to attract only one certain type of candidate. Whereas if you have a good mix too, you can attract a lot of different types of candidates. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're not industry specific. We're position specific, but not industry specific.
As your team continues to grow, do you think there will ever be a point where you stop being hands-on? Or does a part of you just love the art of being hands-on and being full desk, being a recruiter, and just you love that?
I honestly wish I could say that I was the person that will always want to be hands-on and recruiting and doing the client stuff, but I don't know, to be honest. I've seen other people that have had a lot of success, especially even in our last agency. There was this guy that was just a dominant salesperson. He moved up to management, and he wanted to come back down into doing recruiting and sales. I don't know. I think I do like developing business, and I do like talking to candidates. So I can see myself always, having some part in the process. But I think as you grow in this business, you need to work that other muscle, which is the management side, or else you're going to stay, the same size. So I think to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and move into a management position is what is eventually going to need to happen, and giving a little bit more control to the people that I ultimately hire. But, for now, I'm getting plenty of the sales side. And
the sales action. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you too. I'm all about embracing growth and challenge, and that would just be the organic next step to our career. But I love it. I love being hands-on as well. I think in a small way, that's the reason why I'm still hands-on to this day. Like, it's just fun. Like, it's you feel the pain, and when things are going down, it hurts. But I love that somehow. But when things are going well, you love that too, right? And I think for people who are listening, that's the great thing about recruiting, especially if you do make that successful pivot working for yourself. There is unlimited amount of situations and scenarios in which you can be a recruiter. You can just be a solo recruiter, and that's it, and be happy and just recruit and placements. And that's all you want to do to the moon. Or you can have a small team, you can have a mid-sized team, or more the merrier, right? I think recruiting gives you that flexibility, which is really cool. I want to ask you one thing. If you were to go back in time, Joe, do you think you would still be able to find a lot of success when you make that decision working for yourself? Or do you think a lot of what accelerated your ramp up time working for yourself, a lot of it was credited to actually having a recruiting job before, where you just learned how to recruit and learned all the fundamentals. You develop systems and processes, because there are a lot of people out there who are deciding to become a recruiting agency owner without the recruiting professional job experience. That's how I learned. That's how you learned. How important was that to you and your success when you decide to work for yourself?
I do see that people doing that, coming in without any recruiting experience at an agency or other. I think I needed that. I don't think I would had as much success if I didn't go through the learning curve of starting out and just calling candidates, and then getting trained on how to certain processes, because I think there's a lot more that goes into recruiting than people realize. So I do think that you need that training in order to see success. I'm sure there's some outliers. There's some people that can pick those things up and can learn on their own. But I think that you get a huge head start if you work in an agency where you're grinding and you have to hit certain numbers, and you're pushed every day to bill and to find clients and to find new candidates and to get placements done. I think that you learn a lot very quickly there. I think if you go in from a different industry, like if you're a lawyer and you want to then recruit other lawyers, then I think you're at a disadvantage, to be honest. But depends on the person. I don't think that I would have succeeded as much if I didn't have the 4 or 5 years at the agency that I did before. So
yeah, you and me both. Anyone can find a resume, anyone can land a client, but it's all that nuance, what happens in between, and just helping you stay consistent afterwards to be able to do that consistently. I think you learn that through repetition, through systems and processes of working in an established career. So I am in the opinion, it seems like we both agree that if you want to work for us eventually, that's great. But at least go into the job force, find a job at an agency, work there for a year or 2 or 3. You might end up hating it. You might end up loving it. But most importantly, you'll just end up learning a lot that you can leverage once you make that pivot. And I guess moving forward, Joe, it seems like you guys are doing really well. You guys are specialized, working with all different types of companies and clients, which is awesome. There's a lot of uncertainty with the market right now. I'm sure you're seeing that a lot with your clients. We're definitely seeing that a lot with our clients. Is there anything different that you're doing to kind of help you guys navigate the waters moving forward? And just, I think as a secondary thing, what we're seeing a lot more hyper competition. We're seeing a lot more aggressive counter offers, people rescinding offers, companies now rescinding offers. We're now seeing candidates continue to interview even after they accept and sign an agreement. It's situations I've never seen before in my life, in my professional career. So what are you seeing, and how are you preparing yourself moving forward as a business owner?
Yeah, there's not a lot that shocks me now, having done this for 10 years or so. And, you see companies rescinding offers, that's a bit of a new one. But I think that things have been good for the past couple of years in recruiting, especially if we've been doing this for a while. A lot of recruiting companies had a lot more jobs than they've ever had open before. And I think now will be a time to determine, who's really, really good at this. So as long as you drive new business, keep focusing on, building your client base, I think that there will be, I think there's always going to be opportunities for the good people, the good recruiters in this business. And I think that, hopefully because a lot of recruiters get a bad rap too, because companies worked with a bad recruiter before, and they just judge all recruiters the same. So I hope that this tough times or whatever it is. I mean, we haven't really experienced yet at our company, to be honest, but I hope that this puts a lot of people that maybe aren't as good out of the industry, and the good rise to the top, sort of thing. So that's what I'm hoping for with this. But I do think, there's a lot of maybe too many recruiters out there that don't have a lot of experience. So I think they're going to learn how difficult this job really is over the next couple of months, years, potentially. So we'll see.
The strong will survive. If you know your craft well, you can, navigate the waters. But it's a crazy time. And I guess one other thing, Joe, like if you were to go back in time, even right before you decided to embark on your recruiting career, and another sales opportunity presented itself at that time, and you could have still have done the same thing that you've chose to do, which is get a recruiting job, work for yourself. Would you change anything? Would you do anything different?
No. Would I go back and take a different job?
Would you do recruiting again, or would you even do like another sales job if you had the choice?
Yes, I would do recruiting again. I get a lot of freedom in my job, and I think I've made I don't think recruiting is one of those things where there isn't a huge barrier to entry. So I was able to start this business. I don't think if I did another type of sales job, I would be able to, because you need to sell a product or technology, whatever it may be. So no, I would not, because I think this is give me a lot of opportunity, and I see only upside moving forward. So
gotcha. And lastly, for those thinking or maybe making that decision right now to work for themselves, any advice from your experience? It can be just from a pure business owner perspective, or someone who is running and owning their own recruiting shop. But what is like the one advice you want to share to others?
That's a tough question. I would say don't get too high or too low in this business. Take the wins as wins, and take the losses and move on pretty quickly from both, because things change day to day. And if you ever, just got to ride the roller coaster. If you get too high, you can come crashing down, and if you get too low, you're not going to be able to make that next phone call. So try to stay even keeled, and just look at it as take a long-term view as opposed to a short-term view to have success.
Well, you heard it from Mr. Joe Walsh himself. Everybody, don't give in to the extreme swings in this business day to day. Stay consistent, have hard work, be humble, have good work ethic, and you can find great, great success. And I just want to thank you again. And I really, really appreciate you taking time out of this afternoon to chat. Really, really impressive to see what you've done in your career thus far. A lot of similarities in alignment with my personal career. So I'm personally excited to see you guys continue to grow. For those listening, if you are a founder hiring really any hard to fill technical roles, but specifically DevOps, infrastructure engineering, even QA, definitely reach out to Joe. If you are candidates looking for a new job, you have a great network of people who are looking for a job, feel free to reach out to them. And for those that want to connect with you, Joe, where can they find you?
LinkedIn, Grow Recruiting, or just my email, joe@growrecruiting.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Preston.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and wishing you nothing but success, you and the team, as we go into the end of summer and Q4 here, particularly an exciting time, part of the recruiting cycle. So fingers crossed. I hope you're enjoying your summer. Thank you so much again, Joe, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Awesome. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe for other great stories that are coming up. If you need any help with hiring, know of anyone who's looking for a job, or would like to be a guest on this podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at www.kickstartfinder.com. Really, really appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.